What's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are all doing good. As you can probably guess by where I'm standing and the outfit I'm in, I'm about to start working on the car. I've got some real fun stuff that I'm going to be doing on it here, hopefully over the next day or so. As most projects go, it'll probably take a little bit longer than I expect. But I recently just did the brake master, changed that out on this car. As well, I had to end up replacing this caliper too, because I snapped off the brake bleeder screw. So I replaced that, and it's kind of braking still a little bit soft. I might just need to bleed it out again, give it another pass. If that doesn't really help too much, I'll probably end up just going with like stainless steel brake lines. Because I don't know if there's really too much else I could do to give it a better pedal feel. More than anything, it's just really kind of soft on the initial push. If you do it in succession, you build up a lot of pressure and it feels fine, but it's on the first stop after driving on the interstate, it's pretty soft. So I'm going to be trying to work on that, and while I'm at it, I've got some coilovers that I got off Facebook Marketplace that I'm hoping to install while I'm at it. I got these for a really good deal, hopefully a really good deal. That's kind of to be determined because I probably put it in the title of this video, but these I got off Facebook Marketplace from a car that was crashed pretty bad. But what I'm hoping is that the coilovers have survived. There's a little bit of damage on one, and that was the one right here, which was actually on the corner of the car that was in the accident. So this one, let me get this just set up on the wheel that it was on. So this one was the front right corner of the car. Whenever I went and picked up the coilovers from the guy, I got to see where the car was damaged. And it kind of leads me to believe the way that the coilovers were and the way the car was crashed, they should be okay. They're aftermarket springs. They're really stiff, so I can't compress them with my body weight too much, but I can get just enough on it that it feels the exact same as the one on the other side. So I'm hoping that this one at least isn't bound up, from being in a crash and getting moved around the wrong way. But what basically led me to believe that these are probably okay is that a couple things. One, whenever I looked at the car, when I went and picked these up, down there on the transom, that was crumpled in. I had like just one wrinkle there. And as well, when he showed me pictures of the car, a lot of the impact was kind of like this section of the car was kind of pushed in and under. I didn't really ask him how he crashed, other than, how bad was it. He said it wasn't terrible, but obviously it completely totaled the car, so he's parting it out. On the coilovers, the only damage that I've managed to find so far is there's a little bit of scratching right here in the the exterior layer, or the bottom mount basically of the coilover. There's some scratching there, and that was from where the sway bar impacted it. So basically the sway bar got pushed into this kind of at a glancing blow, but did cut into the metal, so I might touch that up with a little bit of paint. I think these are aluminum, so it's not like they're going to rust or anything. Don't want to drop those, at least not yet. It's not going to rust, but it could oxidize, and I mean, it's not like I'm going to be able to fix this and make it look pretty, short of like sanding it all down and filling that in and painting it. But these were inexpensive coilovers for the price I paid for them. They're actually fairly well reviewed. These are Megan Racing. I believe they're called Easy Street 2s. So they are adjustable for damping up here at the top, independent control over the ride height regardless of your spring preload, and it's actually, compared to a lot of the really inexpensive coilovers on the market, it's got a nice, beefy base section, so it's not like I'm really concerned that it's going to basically break off of the mount at the bottom. But there's the big scratch right there that was put into it, and then as well, this little polyurethane or whatever this material is down here where the lower shock mount itself is, this, as you can probably see, this side's kind of damaged. This was pushed in this way, so this whole side was flush up to the body of this, and this was sticking out. So what I did to fix that was I got a C-clamp over here, for like $8 or so. Got a C-clamp, and I got a large enough socket on it. I actually did it the other direction. So it'd been like this where I was pushing it back out. But I got a socket on this end here to basically allow this to come through without this pushing against it and it going nowhere, to allow this to pop back through and sit at the proper position for where this was prior to it being involved in a crash. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty sturdy. It's obviously it's not going to be as good as it was prior to being involved in a crash, but I don't think it's going to move anywhere. It really shouldn't see too much side loads, given this is a double wishbone suspension design vehicle. It's pretty well going to be, restricted up and down loads, which hopefully weren't damaged, at least functionally, in that crash. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I am going to be jacking this car up, getting the wheels and tires off, looking over the brakes again, making sure there's no leaks, because I thought there might be a slight leak coming out of this one from somewhere. I don't know why it's leaking. It's a brand new caliper. I use brand new banjo bolt, crush washers, everything. Maybe it just needs to get snugged down a bit more. But I'm probably going to re-bleed these anyway just to see if there's any more air in the line somewhere that's giving me poor pedal feel. But I'm going to get this thing up in the air. I'm going to probably attempt to put the backs on first, because whenever I picked up this car, originally it was pretty hot boy stanced out, or attempted to hot boy stance, because it came with a set of max peating rods, really, really cheap, inexpensive coilovers, and they were installed only on the back. They weren't on the front, so it was a brand new kit. They probably only had like 100 miles on them or something whenever I bought the car off the guy. But they were on in the backs. They weren't on in the fronts. So what I'm guessing is the previous owner, or whoever did the coilovers on the car, probably wasn't able to get the front coilovers out without doing the long bolt method, which is what I'm hoping. That he just couldn't push the suspension of the car down enough to get the original shock out and then put the new shock in, which is going to be shorter, so it'd slide in easier. That's my hope. I'm hoping there's nothing I'm going to find out in the front end here that's any reason why there wouldn't be, the full set of coilovers on it whenever I actually purchase the car. That would stop me from putting these on now. But what I'm also going to have to do, I'm going to have to also go and get some wood from a hardware store, just so I can build ramps to get this back down off of it. Because, these are low cars, even just at stock ride height, they're still fairly low. You can get a relatively standard jack in there underneath the vehicle at stock ride height, which is what I've got. I got this jack for free. I didn't even have to pay for it. It was a jack at a tire shop that was then passed on to my buddy who worked at the tire shop whenever it was too old and crap for them. And then when it got too old and crap for him, it got to me. So it still jacks up the car. Lighter car is just fine. It's really not good for anything over, I'm going to say, probably like 3,200 pounds, which is fine because this weighs much less than that. But what I'll have to do, because it sits a lot higher than like a really low profile jack, I'm going to have to get some blocks of wood to put beneath the wheels and tires whenever I put everything back on, so I can roll the car off of it. Because with these coils, it's probably going to be a bit lower than stock to, get on and off, or get it up with a jack. But what I'm going to try to do is, I'm basically going to leave these alone. The previous owner of the coilovers said that it was fairly low, and there should be still a little bit of more adjustability down with these, so I'm not going to put them down any lower. My goal is kind of to use these as a, kind of as a test coilover, because when I take this to an autocross, I've only been to one autocross with this thing, I had horrible wheel hop coming out of the back with this car. And I'm hoping what that is the stock suspension is just so tired and it can't do its job anymore. Because the bushings don't look terrible, so my guess is it's not the bushings, but in buying these, because these are pretty stiff springs, what I might try to do this winter is to get a set of polyurethane bushings and run those, basically to remove that extra bit of spring tension that is inherently in with rubber bushings, kind of like a torsion beam inside every little bushing. So hopefully if some polyurethanes come in, it'll have no preload basically there, and in effect, if the way I understand it, that should kind of soften these springs up a little bit without actually changing the spring rate or anything. It'll be more of the spring doing the act, or the work of being a spring and dampening suspension movement. as opposed to the bushings in the suspension. So that's kind of the goal with these. Basically get this thing lower, under control suspension-wise, and get me closer to this being something that, I don't think it's going to be an all-out race car ever, but, something that I can take to a track day. That's ultimately the goal with this thing. It's gotten to autocross. Autocross isn't really that hard on vehicles. It's, harder than street driving if you're driving it all out, but it's not like a track day. So what ultimately I want to do with the car is to get it on track and kind of build some skill there. So I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing up in the air, get the wheels and tires off, and I'll try to set this thing up so you can kind of see me working on it, maybe from a couple angles. I don't know. I don't know how to use time-lapse on this thing, so we'll see. So see you in a second. Okay, so I have the car jacked up in the air now, wheels off and everything. I'm about to go ahead and start tackling some of what I know are rusty bolts and older hardware. One thing for you guys, if you are, picking up your Miata or any car, honestly, one thing I would recommend grabbing or making yourself, I actually bought it from Flying Miata. This is I guess a pinch weld saver, however you want to call it. It's literally just like, a really hard plastic with slots cut in it. So what you can do, hopefully you can see this pretty well, it just slots over your pinch weld, so that way the pressure doesn't go on this, it goes into the stronger metal surrounding it. I think it's worthwhile. It's, it just keeps the pinch welds from getting destroyed, and having myself replace those pinch welds in there you jack the car up from this winter, doing a welding repair, I'm going to keep those in good condition. That's just me though. But what I'm about to do, I'm going to try to tackle the rears first, like I think I mentioned already, just because I know I've had these out before, and it is doable while awful. Without a spring compressor, it is possible, but there are a couple special things I'm going to have to do here to try to do this, especially trying to do it on my own, that are not pleasant. So what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to do this on both sides. I'm going to disconnect the rear sway bar end links. I just soaked it with PB Blaster a second ago, try to get a little bit looser. I've soaked this stuff over the last couple days, hoping to make it a little bit softer and a little bit easier to get through. Soak them, PB Blaster. Let me bring the light around for you guys so you can hopefully see the most important thing I think I can show you guys regarding this job. But I'm going to disconnect that. Obviously, I'm going to have to disconnect this lower shock bolt in order to get the coilover out, because I didn't disconnect any of this other stuff whenever I got these out previously, and put the stock shocks back in. But on these have a very frequent tendency to strip out, and it's not necessarily stripped out in the sense that you would typically strip out a bolt. It's really tight under here. What happens is, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not, but inside of there, I'm hoping you can see this from this angle, maybe not, but there's a little square nut, actually it's on this side, in here, I can feel it, I'm hoping you guys can see this. There's this little square nut in there, and that's supposed to be a captive nut, so there's supposed to be little flanges around here that nut is held in place by. And on these older cars, as these have probably been out possibly a couple times in their life already, they were already thin metal tabs to begin with. They fatigue and fail. And then this can't thread out because what it's threading into spins. So the solution, as you can probably tell here, I tried to do the thinnest possible relief cut here in order to get a wrench onto that square nut, to then be able to thread and unthread this bolt. It's obviously not my favorite thing in the world. I'm always claiming to be looking for a set of really nice, clean, lower control arms. I actually found a set on Facebook of a full NB subframe kit. I'm debating if I really want to do it, if it's worth it or not. But anyway, this is a 17mm nut that you'll need to get a wrench on. And what I found, oh god, where'd it go? Right here. What I found is that this 17mm nut, or wrench with a ratcheting end on it, is slightly thinner overall than a standard 17mm wrench. I don't know why. That was just my personal situation. I tried to find the thinnest one possible so I could cut the least amount out of the control arm and, minimize the amount of strength I'm cutting out of the arm. But ultimately, I had to do that, so that one bolt has to come out on both sides. The other side didn't strip out yet. Hoping that doesn't do it today or on this job, because I'd rather not do that again. That was a very unpleasant job. But I've got those two nuts. And then inside the trunk, if you haven't taken your trunk apart before or looked into it, it's a little bit dark back here, but you can see right back there, that's your top shock mount. And there's two nuts on there. I believe, sorry about that. I believe there's two 12mm bolts there. I know there's two of them. I believe they're 12mm bolts or nuts. But what you're going to do, that's probably a horrible amount of glare. But what you're going to do, disconnect both of these on both sides, so that way this isn't fighting you as you're working, because that is, an anti-roll bar is literally just a big spring. So that won't be fighting you. You can then, whichever way you want to approach it. I know I've had it out before, so I should be able to get this out with no issue. Hopefully, doing that first, then just release those two top nuts, and then what I'll need to do is pretty well just stand on the hub up here and try to push it down. And really, I did it last time with two people. I'm going to see if I can do it today by myself. Get this down past this lip here and out. And then once that's out, I should be able to put the new ones in fairly easily, even hopefully without having to press this down much, if at all. Because, while I have a jack, I can jack the arm up. I can't jack it down. So that's kind of the goal here on the back. Is to get these both free on both sides and get these out of here. So, and if that doesn't work, I will have to take on either getting this nut out of here or those both of those nuts back there. I think those are camber bolts. I could be wrong, actually. I don't think those are camber bolts. I know there's camber bolts down here. These may not actually be, but there's two of them, and they haven't moved in a million years. So I'm going to guess they're not going to want to come out without a fight. So I'm going to try to avoid doing it and let the alignment tech handle that one, because I don't want to. So I'm going to go ahead and try to crack these loose, and we'll go from there. And there's a bunch of mosquitoes in here, so I'm getting bit up, so it's a lot of fun. So see you in a second. Alrighty, so as you can see, there's no shock there anymore. So I did manage to get this out without pulling the top bolt out or this bolt, just by going through and pulling the 3 bolts to actually connect the shock body to the car. Here is the lower shock bolt. So as you can see, there's that square nut that's supposed to be a captive nut inside the control arm, obviously outside of the car. So that one is a 17mm. You will need one of those if you fall into the same position I did originally, where that one failed and left me cutting a hole in my control arm to get the shock out. I still have to pull out the other side to see if that one also strips out. If it does, it's not the end of the world. I know what I'm doing now to get it out. I just need to use a Dremel and cut that same little slot into it. But I don't want to do that if I don't have to. So I'm praying that it stays in place the way it was intended. But since I do have this one out, I was told these are apparently a good bit lighter than, or well, the aftermarket ones, the Megans, are a little bit lighter than the stock coil. So, let's see if it's a good bit of weight. Yeah, I want to say that's a probably a few pounds, honestly, between the two of those things. It's probably a couple pounds lighter. So that's good. That's unsprung mass that's getting pulled out of the car. I believe it's unsprung mass. I think that's the correct terminology for that. But yeah, these are hopefully never ever going to see this car ever again, so long as I'm the one driving it. Yeah, I hate how those drive. I mean, they're very soft and pliable on the road, but I think that's more in part to the shocks being worn out and the springs as well. They've softened up over time, as opposed to being properly, soft like it was intended to be soft. Because over big enough bumps, it just collapses into basically nothing. Maybe that's bump stop up there at the very top. It's hard to really be sure. Yeah, there's still a bump stop up there. But it's really not worth its weight, on this planet anymore. So this is done. These are going to go in place of it. I don't think these are side specific. I believe they're all the same. But what I'm going to do is I'll double check on that before I actually finally put them in. So what I'm going to do first, before I get any further with trying to reinstall these, I'm going to get to the other side and hopefully pull that one out as easily as this one came out. These ones came out fairly easily. Like I said, I'm guessing the previous owner couldn't get the fronts out the same way, and as a result, they just left the fronts on. So my guess is that's what's going to happen. But in case you were ever wondering, how much spring tension there is in those, original bushings. Now, granted, these are probably as old as the car, so they're not going to be as rigid as they were when they first left the factory. But I can just put my foot on there and. There's nothing holding that except for those rubber bushings, and that clunking is just the end link slapping there. But it's it picks it back up. So if you I'm considering going to poly bushings to sort that. I don't want to get the cheapest ones possible and end up with horrible binding issues where it squeaks and does the same thing as it is right now. I'm looking at probably Super Pro bushings as what I'm going to go with to replace these. Because everything I've seen from, in regards to them has been very positive, that there's, the money you're paying on as on top of what you'd be paying for like energy suspension or something, it's very good, and it's worth it. And you shouldn't have to be constantly greasing them or doing anything like that to get them to behave as they should on the car. So I'm going to move on to the next side. So see you in a second. Alrighty. Rust sucks. If you guys haven't had the pleasure of working on rusty cars, it's terrible. So I'm on the fronts, as you guys can probably tell. And I'm working on getting these end links out. I've never had these apart while I've owned the car. And judging by the amount of rust and seizure that these things seem to be putting up as a fight against me, I don't know that they've ever been off the car. I feel like they had to have been once, just as a little bit of inside baseball here. This subframe on the front is drastically cleaner than the one on the back. Now, I know the back end has been in some kind of a small incident in the past, because there is a small dent in like the rear trunk, I guess firewall or whatever, trunk wall, I guess you could call it. Really faint, nothing crazy. I mean, it doesn't affect how the car handles as far as I can tell. But it is there. But the subframe is as kind of nasty looking as the surrounding area. It's not any worse, it's not any better. Up front, it looks drastically better than the area surrounding it, just quite honestly. All the bushings, well, not all the bushings, but like some of the bushings seem to be in better shape, like the camber bolts as well, like look to be in great shape up here, but in the back, they look terrible. They look like they've been sitting in the bottom of a lake. So I feel like this subframe is either from an NB or just another NA, and it was a lot cleaner than this one was, or this one is. But what's strange is these end links are putting up a hell of a fight. I could not get them to budge, period, with when I was using a 3/8 ratchet on it and a 14 mil socket to try to get the end links out, just get the nut and bolt free. And they were not moving. Like, it was literally beginning to like strip out the inside of my 3/8 ratchet, which that would be the second time this has happened with one of my 3/8s. Yeah, I'd have to replace it again at some point here sooner now because it's starting to strip. I need to find a 1/2 inch to 3/8 conversion bit, so on really rusty shit like this, I can just use the big ol' wrench and try to attack it and hopefully not have it strip out. At least not strip out the wrench. If it strips out a nut and bolt for an end link, that's not the end of the world. It's annoying, but not the end of the world. So I'm going to keep fighting this because I've got two 14 mil wrenches here. I'm just slowly making progress. It's almost all the way off on this side. I'm guessing the other side's going to be just as bad, and it's going to build up a hell of a fight. So I'm going to continue working on this and listen to music while I do it. And what do you guys listen to when you work on cars? I'm curious. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Right now, it's a lot of kind of more like classic rock stuff, kind of like, you know, Led Zeppelin, like, and like the band and stuff like that. Kind of just helps get enough motivation to keep like fighting this shit out, as opposed to like, I don't know, smooth jazz. I don't know what you guys all listen to. Sometimes I listen to podcasts, but on a day like today, that's not what I'd be listening to. I need something to kind of keep me moving, keep me going. So I'm going to keep working on this. I don't know if you guys have music you use to get you through rusty nuts and bolts. I'd love to know what that is, and you can put that down in the comments. But I'm going to keep fighting away at this and probably move to fighting the other side to get this sway bar off. And then from there, attack the rusty nuts holding the lower shock mount on. So I'm going to cut here and see you in a second. Okay, start date 2020. I don't know how dirty my face is. I'm assuming it's bad, given that my hands look terrible. This is where I'm going to round out for the night. I knew I wasn't going to get this job done tonight, but I was trying to get as far as I could. As you see, I attempted, let's leave it at that, doing the zip tie trick to kind of try to compress these enough to get the front shocks out. That's not going to work. For one, these zip ties are really cheap, and two, it's a dangerous, stupid move. I just wanted to try it out, you know, just kind of get an idea if it was even feasible. But it's not looking like it's going to. The shock is free. If I push this down, it'll slide out, and I can get the top free of the perch up here. But the issue is the upper control arm right there. It's not going to let the shock up and angle enough to get out of the little pocket that the shock sits in. So what I'm going to have to do is do the long bolt method up there, which means I'm going to need, I think it's 21 millimeter wrench and socket. I actually have a 21 millimeter wrench. I don't know why I have one, but I do. Because I've never done this job on a Miata before. I don't know what I used it on. But I do have the wrench, so I just need to go and get one of those big old sockets. And pull that out, and this will come free. This will all drop down a little bit, and I can yank this out. And then, you know, I still on the other side have to zip out the lower shock bolt on the other side. But that shouldn't be too complicated. It'll probably be difficult because this has been pretty rough. The worst, honestly, was these sway bars. Just getting the end links off, because they are completely, I mean, they were just completely seized in there. Like, here, I got kind of the light here. You can see it's like, you know, inside the boot, they weren't getting any kind of moisture to them, so they stayed literally just zinc coated. But on the outside, I mean, I stripped most of the rust off just in forcing it free. But I mean, these were completely caked with rust, and they just, these are not any. I even almost rounded off. I was really gonna be mad if I rounded that thing off. But they're shot, and also in you know, my investigative work, those bushings aren't really any much better. If I can't get some locally here soon, I'll just continue to use them. But I'll get new hardware for them. But I'm going to put in an order for some fresh ones, if not some adjustables, just because I don't want to deal with that anymore. Yeah, that's pretty well where I'm at. Like I said, I'm going to leave it here for tonight. It's not a complex job, but, you know, I think it's pretty obvious why a lot of the automotive YouTubers come out of California, because there's no rust. They can make 15-minute Miata coilover install videos, and I can't, because I'm fighting with rust and I don't have power tools, so well, I have a few, but I don't use them really for this kind of stuff. They're honestly more like carpentry tools, but I don't like doing carpentry, so I'm gonna leave it here for tonight. Come back to it tomorrow after I go and pick up some more fresh hardware, and yeah, see you in a second. Okay, so it's the next day, and it's been a long morning so far. Can't tell by the mess, I have something stopping me. And currently, I have spring compressors on here, but currently it is this bolt down here, the lower shock bolt on this one. It is completely seized in place. It's absolutely not coming out. I've tried hammering it out. I've tried using the 17 mil bolt trying to spin it out, but at this point all it's doing is just spinning the bushing itself inside of the I guess the housing, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's not coming out by means of rotation or hammering either. I've tried hammering on this side with the nut there, trying to push it out to free it enough to maybe spin it out, and none of that's worked. Ultimately, I've looked online, and what people are saying you have to do is just cut it up to get it out. Some people are saying they can get like some kind of a 90-degree cut or something into there, into the inside of the opening here. I don't have anything like that on hand, and I've already spent like $70 today on a breaker bar and replacing a 3/8 ratchet I snapped trying to get this bolt out in the first place. So I'm going to try not to spend any more money on this, because I mean ultimately there's no reason to try to salvage these shocks. I mean they're not really worth anything, and if I ever wanted to sell the car, and I'll just sell it with coilovers on it. Somebody's going to put coilovers in their car. It's not that big a deal. There's not. Maybe you can't hear me too well with that on. I just realized. Let me just unplug that for a second. Maybe that's a little bit better for you. But yeah, this needs to come out. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to cut off basically the shock body here where it mounts to the shock bolt, or where it's welded to the shock bolt, using an angle grinder. I've got this still from whenever I did the rust repair and everything on this car. I'm going to try to cut that off because the top bolt's on here already loose. The spring's compressed, so I mean it's not like it's putting tension on the damper. And from there I should be able to get this out, probably without even dropping this, honestly, if I do it this way. And then from there, hopefully be able to hit it with the Dremel that I've got with the cutting wheel, to make a little bit more precise cuts to cut the bolt and the shock body out of there, and then I can hopefully just pull the lower shock body off and then punch the bolts out, or the remainder of the bolt out on each side, and then it'll be out. And then I can take the compressors and get it onto the other side and get that shock out, and then all the shocks will be out of this car. And I'll have to go buy some new hardware for them, and I'll be able to put the coilovers on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. If anything, this is just kind of a lesson, a reminder for me. I've already gone through this several times with this car, but it's a reminder for me, probably a lesson for maybe one of you guys watching it, guys or girls. Rust is just awful to work through, and it's ultimately something, if you're going to buy older cars, you're going to have to learn to deal with, and find workarounds and find ways to get through it, because it's inevitable. Every stuff's going to rust unless you live in Arizona or I don't know, Arizona. You're probably going to be dealing with this. And each region's got their own issues. Like if you're in Arizona, there's no rust, but every single bit of plastic on the car is going to have just shattered and cracked from the heat. So I mean, you're always going to have issues with older cars. That's just the nature of working on them. But it is what it is. You do what you do because you like it. So I'm going to probably find some hearing protection because I know that thing's loud. And go ahead and try to cut the bottom of the shock body off the shock bolt. So it'll probably make a horrible mess, but at this point it's got to come off. So I'm going to get cutting on it and hopefully get some good results here. Alright, so quick update. I did get the shock out, and this is the method I'm going to take to removing the shock bolt. Hopefully you can see this. Basically, got the back of the angle grinder up here through the shock hole in the upper control arm. If I turn it the other way, I'm going to be able to hopefully slice down through there and get this out. So just wanted to cut in quick and show you guys that. I'm really tired. I just had my first snack in about 24 hours, just due to various circumstances. But either way, this sucks, but you got to do it. So see you in a second. All right, so not sure where I left off with the video work, but after a horrible mess, everything is out. Suspension is out of the car, and I can begin with reassembly. It might be a little bit dark in here right now, but at the moment, I can actually show you what I did to get the front passenger side out of the car. Right here, you can see shock and struts, no shock mount, what remains of the shock mount and bolt. So yeah, so what I had to do, I'll try to use my phone to kind of light up the wheel well here, kind of to describe what I had to do. So what I had to go ahead and do is, I could not for the life of me beat the shock bolt out of the shock mount. It just was not going to come out, and it was, for all intents and purposes, welded inside the shock bushing. So what I had to do, with the limited space I have available and the tooling that I have available to myself, I cut off first the shock bushing from the shock body to get that free. So I cut into it, I let some of the fluid out of there. I mean, it's like I was going to save these things anyway. It would have been nice to have a very backup, but ultimately it is what it is. Either way, cut that off first to then move on to trying to remove the bushing. So to get the bushing out, I wanted to cut on the sides of it. So imagine this end link here. Imagine this is the bushing, this is the shock body, this is the bushing I had to cut out. So I cut this off first, and then I cut down into the sides to free up the center section of the bushing to get it out as well, and then leaving just the two ends that had to get pushed out and split apart, which was, still no fun. It wasn't easy getting those last little bits out, but it was a lot easier than it was before. So you can see I probably put a couple little nicks into the mount there, but I'm not overly concerned about it. If I come across a deal that I like, I might just go ahead and buy a whole front subframe assembly and maybe even a rear subframe for this car, just to start fresher. But it's all out. It's kind of dirty in there. I'm going to clean these up. But because I cut the bolt out, obviously can't reuse it. So I went to the Mazda dealer. I ordered new lower shock bolts and corresponding nuts, just so I know that they fit up. And what I'm also going to do, I'm also going to go ahead, or I already did, I went and bought, I ran to O'Reilly's and got a few extra little nuts and bolts here and there, just to redo the end links, just in some less sticky, rusty hardware. So I'm going to go ahead and do what I can right now to get this done. Go ahead and throw the rear coilovers in, and yeah, kind of just wait on the front. So I'll cut back to this tomorrow, because I should have the bolts here by tomorrow to go ahead and throw the fronts in. So that's where I'm going to leave it for right now. Alrighty, well, the install is complete. This is it with the car in the air, and I'm going to drop down. I got ramps in preparation for how low this is going to be, because on this side over here, back here, this is actually higher than the wheel was sitting at ride height. This is lower than ride height is, with the stock suspension in there, and this is at full droop. So it's probably going to come in here a little bit. I shouldn't have to worry about needing to roll this fender out, I'm hoping, because this is the one I replaced, so it's not, complete factory spec, but if it takes a little bit of rolling, I can probably accomplish that here real quickly before I have to do anything extra. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and drop this down, get it on its wheels again. I pulled the front lip off because I know I'm gonna just destroy that thing if I try to go up my driveway with that. So that's now hanging out over there. But yeah, I'm gonna drop this down and call that a complete coilover install. And I might give you some kind of a once-over kind of review of it here after I go take it for a quick test drive. I'll probably have to adjust it, but I'll probably leave that for off camera. I'll probably just kind of go over what I think on it. It's going to be a lot stiffer, I'm sure. But, these are fully adjustable, and it's going to take some work to get them, set exactly right, but that comes with anything that's going to be adjustable that you got to put in work on, so I'm really pleased with it. I was most concerned about this one because this is where the accident was on the car I got these from. Was kind of worried these were going to be bound up on this corner especially, but I tested it whenever I put it on there, and it's going just fine. So I think this is a complete install of Salvage coilovers. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the car and go for a spin. Okay, I'm not sure where I actually finished up, if I made an outro or kind of a final summation on this coilover install or not, so I'm recording this one right now. If I didn't, this is going to be the last clip of the video. It definitely lowered down the car a good bit. I just took some measurements on it, and for where they were adjusted whenever I purchased them, it lowered down the rear about 2 inches, and then it lowered the front about 1 inch from where they were sitting. Actually, the rears were probably about 2.5 inches. As you can kind of see back here, this is definitely the lowest of all of them from what I just measured. As you can see, it's pretty well, the end of the quarter panel is kind of at the top of the tire back here. But up front, there's still a pretty decent wheel gap up there. And there's still gonna be a little bit of adjustment that I need to do on these before I'm happy with them. My plan is pretty well to just kind of do maybe another 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch or so down in the front and bring the rears up probably about 1/2 inch, just so that way I can keep a little bit of kind of a rake forward, because right now it's definitely leaned back a bit and I don't really want it to keep that way. But overall, I've driven on them about twice now, to kind of break in the new suspension, kind of let it level out and kind of find where it's settled and everything. And this is where it's at. But overall, they're really not that bad on overall comfort. I mean, they're definitely stiffer than the stock 30-year-old shocks at this point are, and the springs too. But they really don't feel terrible. I've got them both set front to rear, right in the middle settings as far as the overall, stiffness of the dampers, and that's fine. It's really honestly really comfortable for street use as a project car, not as a daily driver. But I mean, I'm probably gonna do a little bit more playing around with the settings a bit, and find exactly where I like it. Got a dog here that wants to play. Drop it. Okay, here, where? There you go. But yeah, just kind of get it really dialed in. Like I said, gonna lower the front down a bit, bring the rear back up a smidge, and kind of play with the damping settings. As of right now, I don't have any issues with fender clearance. Obviously, at the front, it's really not going to be that hard. I've got 15x7 plus 35 RPF ones up here. Whenever I lower it back down, I might run into a little bit of clearance and need to roll the fenders back a bit. Right now, they're not rolled, and from what I've read online, they shouldn't need it. But time will tell, and we'll figure that out whenever we get to that point. Anyway, I think that's where I'm going to round out this video. I'd really appreciate it if you guys, liked, subscribed, kind of, give me ideas for new videos, things to do on the car. I'm always trying to kind of slowly improve it. Not really slowly improve it, but, as things come up, make some good content. Leave me your thoughts, any questions, anything. I'd be more than happy to help. Hit the notifications. These aren't going to be super, daily videos or anything like that, but, try to make them come out enough that keeps people involved, keeps people interested. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave me your thoughts in the comments, and see you in the next video.